Hi everyone and welcome to The Download. Today I'm joined by the wonderful Julie Alexander, CEO of Changing Change International, which is a really interesting organisation that's entirely focused on culture and leadership and development. So it'll be great to have a conversation with Julie today. Julie, welcome to The Download.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. So clearly with an English accent there. How long have you been in Australia now?
It is a bit of a dodgy accent, isn't it? I've been in Australia for literally just over 10 years.
Literally,
so
10
it
years
was
and...
February the 29th I landed, which doesn't exist, so...
So you didn't really arrive?
Well, I'm still trying to
arrive.
Only
once every 4 years.
Yes, only once every 4 years I celebrate. But yeah, 10 years ago I came over to set up a new division for a loyalty marketing company that I was working for in the UK and across Europe, and then came over to Australia for that.
Okay, and then how long ago did you start Changing Change?
It's been through a few different iterations, but essentially over the last sort of four or 5 years, it's sort of ended up and crafted itself into what is today Changing Change International.
Okay, and how did you end up doing this? Where did this sort of interest in culture and leadership, etc., where did it come from?
Well, like most people, I think it's our past experiences that when you look back, you can see where the dots all line up. And for me, it was very much around having worked in some really hideous cultures where there were bullies. And when I say bullies, it wasn't just somebody speaking not so nicely to you. It was real bullying where people were manipulated. There was division, there were silos, there was physical threats, and that was one of the environments that I worked in. It was a company when I first joined it. I was there for 9 years in total. When I first joined, it was really entrepreneurial. Everybody helped each other. It didn't matter if you were the MD, dived on the phone, answered the phone in the same way because you were all customer obsessed. And by the end of it, we were after quarterly earnings targets and our sales had plummeted and we had a bully in. I had a few other experiences that were kind of similar. And then when I worked
Was it one bully? Sorry to interrupt. Was it one? Did you say we had a bully in or we had bullying?
We had bullying, and
Okay.
there was one specific person who springs to mind who was the sort of the tail end of me exiting that business. And I have worked for other businesses where there have been similar-ish things going on. But then when I came to Australia, and lucky for me, I was actually made redundant after I'd been here 3 years. And I decided to go and try a few different things before you buy, try a few different environments. And I actually worked for Business Chicks, which is the largest women's network in Australia. And, I was blown away. So what you see is what you get. And I remember I went to a funeral in the morning and I actually went into work in the afternoon because I knew I'd feel better in their environment.
Wow.
And that was just kind of a bit of a light bulb for me. And the fact that I've got a Kindle stuffed full of human behaviour. I'm fascinated by high performance, always been running high performance teams throughout my career. And it was just a combination of all of those elements that just led me down the path to go, you know what, if I can stop one person having one of those days that I experienced, then it's been worth it.
Wonderful.
And obviously what I do is far more than just one person.
Absolutely. So I have an interesting couple of things there. Just one thing that I picked up on that you said was, luckily enough, I was made redundant. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a big message for a lot of people in there. I think 65% of statistics are made up on the spot. So go with me on this, but I believe that it's 1 in 4 people in their career the average executive will be made redundant at least 4 times in their career. And I think the view is, at the time that you're made redundant, the view is, oh my God, sometimes what am I going to do? But the opportunity that it presents is really interesting. So I just thought I'd pick out on that one because that happened to me too. And I said, geez, I'm so happy that I was made redundant because I had a big career change.
Yeah. I hate being average then because I have been made redundant about 4 times.
Well, there you go.
God, that's really awful to be average. Anyway, look, I was...
How about we rephrase it so you feel better? Yeah. On average, an executive is made. There you go. Is that better?
You're average. Yeah, look, being made redundant, it's all around mindset. It's, what do you perceive it to be? And I think it's the Chinese symbol for crisis is danger and opportunity. So danger, crisis and opportunity. It's one of those two. Look it up. But it's all around how you look at it. Yes, there's an initial potential threat, and then the other side of it is what then is open to you. One of the phrases I used to use a lot is unplug from the matrix. We have this huge expectation that you leave school, you go to university, you get a job, you buy a house, you get married, you have children, and you're sold this whole deferred life myth that by the time you're 60, 70, whatever, then you finally get to live. And for me, it was around take those opportunities, very much about embracing change, not ironically my company being called Changing Change. So it's really about changing the way that change happens for people and helping people embrace that. And one of the biggest things that I had was a girlfriend who I went to school with. She phoned me up in an absolute panic one day, and she said, "Oh, I don't know what to do. I've been made redundant." And I'm like, "Yay, congratulations!" And she's like, "No, you don't understand. It's awful." And I said, "Well, talk me through it." She said, "Well, I've been here since I was 18, and that was a few years." I said, "Okay, so what's your payout?" She said, "Well, they've offered me 2 years' money, but I'm not sure whether to take it or to try and get another job in the organisation." So they've given you 2 years' money. Can I just get a few facts straight? And she's like, 2 years' money, and that's tax-free in the UK, so that's 2.5 years' money. Okay, do you have a mortgage? No. Any big credit card bills? No. She's got no dependents, no credit card bills. What sort of shoes do you have in your wardrobe? Well, I've got 5 pairs, one pair of heels and the rest are trainers. She did not have a big habit of buying handbags or shoes or anything.
That's why she had a paid off house.
That's why she had a whole thing was paid off. And I just had to say to her, do yourself a favour. Is that not something you've always wanted to do? Go and study something, go and travel, go and give back, go and volunteer for something. Just find out what it is that you want to do, rather than just leaping back in. She was scared that having a hole in her CV, nobody would want to employ her. And I'm like, well, she probably shouldn't admit this on camera, but I've got holes the size of football pitches on my CV. And I said to her, if you didn't have a hole in your CV, I wouldn't employ you. Like, what are you bringing new to it? So that's what I see around redundancy, is around an opportunity to get new skills, new learnings, and embrace change.
It absolutely is. Now, there's one thing you said when you were talking about, and then we'll just briefly touch on this, and we'll move on to some of the interesting things you're doing now, not the least of which is jumping off 55-foot poles and bridges and doing all sorts of adrenaline-filled activities. Yes. But something that you did say was that you started at that organisation and it was customer obsessed, and we at Insentra call ourselves partner obsessed, as you know. Yep. And it was entrepreneurial, and the MD CEO would get in and answer the phone, and that sounds very much like what we are, even though we're now sort of 75 people around, in 3 countries around the world. Yeah. My question to you is, if you were there for that and you were there for when it changed, can you pinpoint anything that specifically happened when that change took place?
Yes. And it was, this is going to sound awful, but when the Americans arrived. And we were actually, there was private equity. It all just changed from focus on the customer, focus on the client, focus on the team, and that looks after everything else. And when it was suddenly what I call the equivalent of running on the pitch and staring at the scoreboard and expecting things to happen, we went from, they're just indicative numbers, but say 16 million customers, £1 a month each, we went down to less than 2p. It was ridiculous, the amount of money that we lost at that time when we changed focus. And it was less about partnering with our clients and our customers and more about what can we get from it.
So it was very scorecard driven. It was very much the fundamental dynamics of the business changed from being customer focused to being internally and bottom line focused, rather than
purely that. Now every business needs to look at the numbers, as you know. We need to have an eye on those, but it took precedent over everything else, and that was quite a sea change. And yeah, it didn't go well after that.
Fair enough. So now, Changing Change. So you're a speaker, you're a facilitator, you host your own conferences with Changing Change.
With great speakers.
I've been privileged to have that opportunity to speak at at one of those conferences. So what do you think that now leadership and culture look like in sort of this disrupted world that we're living in?
Yeah, look, some of the trends that I'm seeing around is people very much, getting the message that this is around connecting people with a bigger purpose than just having a job or just making money, but not necessarily knowing what those right ingredients are. So there's still an idea that you can fix it with a leadership course, or you can fix it with, getting someone in just to look at your values, and that's, whilst that's a great part, both of those are elements of it, it has to go beyond that. I go into organisations and they've got, we've done this whole stuff around their values, and then, okay, can you show me them? Oh, well, we only get them out of our drawer when we're doing, our reviews. They don't actually live them, and they don't know how to live them. Mm-hmm. So they're the sorts of trends around trying to help people find what purpose they may have personally. But again, it's not entrenched, it's not attuned throughout the whole organisation, which is the difference with what we do, is around really attuning the organisation.
And how do you do that? What are some of the key things that you would do to take a culture that's okay and make it great?
Yep.
Is one thing. To take a culture that's crap and make it great is a whole different thing. There's so many things to think about. So if we just take on a generic level, you go in somewhere, they know that they're okay, they think they need to do some things better, Change International has now been engaged. Yep. What's the kind of process that you would take an organisation through?
It's very much what I call is looking at your sort of GPS, your global positioning system. But that's all around working out what the gap is, and then looking at what that plan might look, and then formulating a strategy. So the GPS, in terms of the gap, the plan and the overall strategy, the purpose and strategy, is very much around looking at where you need to go, but also as a GPS, it's that your global positioning system, but your global positioning in terms of who do you want to be as an organisation? How do you want to stand out? Your culture is your DNA. Your culture is your thing that makes you different. There are other companies that do very similar things to you, but the thing that makes you different is all the things that you do to nurture and support your team and your culture. So that would be the first thing that we do. So that's around culture. Then we look at the team, and then we look at, from their perspective, we look at how they can thrive in the culture that's created, and the mindsets and the physical behaviours that they need to look at. And then finally, we then attune the rest of the business to support both of those things. So you quite often get a disconnect between saying that we're, really there for the customer, but then the incentive program is completely disconnected. It's about selling widgets. So it's those sorts of things. Also your physical environment, making sure that's right. So the culture, then your team and the business all need to be attuned together. So that's how we would approach it, looking at all of the gaps and filling them and making sure people are really, really living what they say they want to do. And it's only when you really get in and start digging that they've got what they hope and aspire their culture to be, and that reality. And that is really a case of mind the gap. Yesterday I was in a
Spoken
room.
like a true
Mind the gap.
Mind the gap.
Mind the gap. Yesterday I was in a room of 50 tradies, and I love the fact that they wanted to change their culture. I mean, that's not something necessarily you would ever think of an organisation like that would want to do, but there were some behaviours that were undermining the whole thing, and that were being allowed to pervade. But then again, those people also, because they were involved in designing the culture, designing what the behaviours, the standards and expectations would be, they came up with things like humility. That wasn't a word we saw coming, but they were participating in it. They came up with that word, and now they own it.
So part of what you do is involve people in the creation of what the new looks like. Absolutely,
because if people don't have a say, a voice, it doesn't necessarily mean they'll get a vote, but there needs to be direction from the top. But if they don't get a voice, it's not an authentic culture from my perspective. And it needs to be authentic from the top down, bottom up, and everybody in between. Otherwise, you're just trying to live to this unrealistic dream of what this culture might be, and it's not sustainable.
And what do you see as the biggest challenges for organisations in making a change?
A big one is fear of the unknown. They know how to do whatever it is that they're doing at the moment. They know what the results are. There's the fear of, I'm going to now launch on this new project. I'm going to spend, invest some money on doing it. And I don't know what's going to happen in the meantime. And they kind of feel quite exposed to doing it. But that's why they work with organisations like ours and come to things like the Culture Summit, to hear speakers. You shared your story, your journey. It was about the good, the bad, all the mistakes, all of the things that went right. It's around surrounding yourself with that sort of peer group. So those are the sorts of things you can do to mitigate that. But fear of change, fear of what it might do. And, you're going along here, you might need to take a dip, but then you start that trajectory back up and surpass what you were doing before. But sometimes, the old saying, you need to pull an arrow back before it can shoot forwards. And that's what you need to do when you're looking at your culture. Okay.
And one of your catchphrases is do, dream, dare.
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
Do, dream, dare. The do part for me is all around, it's not for a lack of knowledge. Any one of us can pick up 100 books. If you Google culture, company culture, in 0.7 seconds, you'll get, billions of answers. It's not a lack of knowledge, but it's about a lack of doing what we know. So doing is all around, take what you already have to hand and just start making a change now. Just do one thing at a time, bite-sized chunks, and just start doing. The dream part is more around having this vision for what you really, truly want, and create that with your team. The vision of what it could be like and what your culture and the results that you'd be seeing by virtue of that culture being in place. So, you'll be seeing high performance, you'll be seeing people stood around a barbecue, what would they be saying about your company? So having a real dream about what it could be, and the recommendations and how easy that your recruitment would be, because people would actually opt in rather than having to be enticed in. You get recommendations from people. And then the dare is all around putting, your, as I would call, because I'm a girl, big girl pants on, and around just going for it and daring to be different. And that's about the disruptive leader. And disruptive leadership is all around putting your culture front and centre, not being afraid to be different, to stand out, to be that black sheep in a sea of white sheep, and really, really stand firm about your principles, your purpose, and champion your people, your customers and your clients.
I'll ask you a question. Have you ever seen a white sheep?
They're all a bit mucky, aren't they?
They are, aren't they?
They're all a bit mucky.
I don't know why we always say that, but we do.
We do.
We digress. I just thought that was an interesting...
Yeah,
I had visions in my mind, and the only type of white sheep I could come up with was a cartoon one.
And there are red ones, aren't there, in the outback, because they just get all dusty.
They get
so
dusty,
they're all
that's right.
And I did go to New Zealand, and they had very funny coloured sheep over there. But
That's
another story.
Is that where you did some of these sports? Some of these...
I did one of them, actually, yes. Very good segue. I jumped off and I'm always going to pronounce it wrong, so everybody else forgive me. It's the Karawai Bridge. It's the original
the big
place.
The bungee, the original bungee?
The original one, the AJ Hackett, the original one.
I hope they've changed the rope since they started it, but you're here, so
they
did.
I think they did, yeah. And look, I'm a trained master coach. At the time of doing that, I had a coach. And
what is a master coach?
Because I need to sound important. No, but it's the training designation that of the different levels of coaching.
As in
coaching,
sports coaching,
or life, business, that side of things.
Okay.
So rather than just having a weekend course, I spent 5 years studying and learning all the different facets of behaviour. So
right.
So from that perspective, when I first did a bungee, I actually had a coach, and I was moving countries, and I was in this awful thing of so much change. I didn't know how I was going to do everything, and it was a whole metaphor for letting go. My coach said to me, pick something as your metaphor and have that as your thing. And there were a number of things I could have done. One of my friends said, "Oh, why didn't you jump out of an airplane?" And I was like, "Yeah, but that doesn't scare me." I mean, what's scary about having a big dude strapped? I assumed it was a big dude strapped to your back who knows what to do. You just have to allow him to do what he knows. But a bungee for me was real let go. Mm-hmm. It was stand on the edge, and I had to let go.
That sounds like a fantastic analogy for a leader as well.
Yes.
Often a leader is standing on the edge and having to let go.
Yeah,
to be successful.
and look, you can watch the video at any time. It's hysterically funny. I'm white as a sheet.
White as a sheep, did you say?
Yeah, sheep. Just awful. What was I focusing on? You know, what was I saying to myself? I was just so tense. You can see it on the video. It's just awful. There's all this pumping music. There was this whole lineup of Japanese tourists who'd come to see this. You know, they were all there waiting. And the guy says to me, "Right, 1, 2, 3." And I just grabbed him and said, "You're going to have to talk to me some more." You know, I literally was just frozen to the spot. And I'd been bargaining. I'd say, "Can I do this? Can I do that? Can you push me? Can you jump with me?" Like all this rubbish that I was doing. And he said, "Do you see that bridge over there? Just look at that and just let yourself go." And I did say to him, I said, "I remember a girlfriend who said, if you put your arms in the air, it's kind of changes the center of," and that was it. That was the last word I uttered, because the next minute I've gone. And I'm halfway down going, "Crap, I think I've gone." There's this little as the air sort of pushed out of my lungs, and then I was gone. Like I was over the edge and boing, boing, and I couldn't drive for the rest of the day. I felt drunk. Right. I said I had a girlfriend who'd watched me, and all the Japanese tourists going, "Yeah." Yeah, she walked down the stairs as I walked up, and she was in tears. And when I saw her, I kind of burst into tears as well. But it was just that trust. And since then, I have done other things. I have jumped off a 55-foot high pole. And I remember I shimmied up to the top. I had this vision in my head of me being first up, getting up to the top, doing this beautiful swan dive off. And that was the video that was playing in my head. Very different from the bungee, where I was like, the side's too close, I'm going to hit my head, like all the other stuff that was in my head. And when I went up to the top of the pole and looked over this beautiful Fijian area in front of me, you can actually hear me swear on the video going, "Oh," because the fear wasn't there.
That's wonderful.
And that's what it's like when you trust and you've let go and you get to the other side of change. It starts to become easier. But it's crossing that line to start with.
Yeah, and sometimes crossing that line means you've got to do some study and do some reading. So tell me and tell some of our viewers about your top 3 books that you'd recommend.
Yeah, as I say, I've got like 64 unread books on my Kindle. I'm a bookaholic. Unfortunately, I then have got Audible too, and that started to pile up. But 3 that immediately jumped to mind were The Power of Starting Something Stupid. It's a book by Richie Norton. I was lucky enough to actually have a session and spoke to him. And it's something that he started after he lost his son at a very, very young age. And it's a whole thing around taking that leap. Mm-hmm. And the most successful companies, a lot of them just started from a really stupid idea of, jeans, selling jeans out of a garage, or, the stories of Apple and all of those sorts of things. When anybody would look at them, you might judge those as quite stupid ideas, but look at them now. And it's the power of doing that and not fearing the change and just embracing it. None of us get out of this alive, so you might as well do it. Leaders Eat Last. Great book by Simon Sinek. Again, looking at true leadership and what that means. And that's around servant leadership. That's around supporting your team to bring out the greatness in them. We set the stage rather than having to perform on it. That's how we talk about it. And the last one is around primal leadership, which is all emotional intelligence. And how you can utilize that within an organization. And for me, that's a great one, because if you don't know yourself, then how can you know others and lead others?
Wonderful. So tell me a crazy experience at work, Julie. You've had so many experiences. You had some bad ones.
I've had some really
crazy one for us.
Yeah, I'm sort of I obviously was forewarned a little bit that there might be something like this, and I thought of one, and how many of them I can no longer tell because they're no longer PC.
They're the best stories.
They are the best stories. So clients, if any of them are watching this now, because I'm still friends with a lot of the people I was clients with, this is from back in the UK days.
Well, let's keep it anonymous then.
We'll keep it anonymous, but they will know who they are. We were doing team building, and we were doing a treasure hunt around London. So we had a list of all the things that we had to go and find. There were many and varied, and we had to find a plug. And me and the head of the area that I was dealing with, and it was a bank, we decided to think laterally. We were just running out of time. There weren't really that many shops. We had a budget that we were allowed to spend. Anyway, we were enjoying ourselves so much by this point that we actually stumbled across the door of a sex shop and found a plug in the sex shop that kind of fit the bill. It was a little bit over the budget. In fact, it was quite a bit over the budget, but we went, this is perfect. We also had to find some...
So you found a plug that fit the bill.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that,
yes,
Julie.
yes.
Let's move away from that story and let's maybe...
The let up for that story is that we knew that they couldn't challenge us on how much money we'd spent on the plug without revealing themselves. And there were a number of people that went, you couldn't possibly have spent £10 on that. And then they realised what they'd said, and that was it. So it was good. It was brilliant. It was good.
Brilliant. You know what? I'm finding that funny enough that I'm not even going to ask you my usual question, which was to tell us a joke, because I think that is fantastic. Julie Alexander, CEO from Changing Change International. Thank you so much for joining us on the download.
Thank you for your time.
It's been wonderful to have you here.
It's great to reminisce about some of those stories.
That's brilliant.